Welcome to The Switch, podcasts that are wired to online and offline marketing.
Alrighty, welcome back to The Switch. We have got Michael Coghill in the house. He's going to be WA's best windsurfer by the end of the year. And you've only got a few days, mate.
I'm a long way behind my goal of 1,000 kilometres.
Oh, gee. But
that was the start of the year goal when I got into it.
Really?
Try and get 1,000 Ks of actual.
And how do you measure that?
Well, you got my watch tracks my GPS, so you can.
Ah, gotcha. Yep.
Gives you speed, gives you maps your runs.
Yeah.
So then you can just track how much distance.
So can you drive? Because that's quite important.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah?
If I can
Jeez.
maintain speed, like that's my biggest problem.
Yeah.
As soon as I get planing, I'm bloody wow.
Yeah.
Crash.
Well, you are actually going to enlighten us a little bit about people in the know it as the circular economy, but I've been talking to a few people about that, and they don't really know.
Have no idea
that it actually exists. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there are a couple of different areas of the circular economy, and maybe you can enlighten us. There's the technical, and there's the biological side to the circular economy. Why don't you start off with your expertise for e-waste and just trying to enlighten the audience. Everyone is going to be very fascinated with what you actually do and how you play into the circular economy.
Yeah, well, I guess how did we get into the circular economy? Like we started a business trying to connect the dots on the material flow. And so that just, you start asking the questions, well, how did this get made? Where did it come from? How did it get here? And early days, I remember trying to map out the supply chain for a computer. And it was a fascinating exercise because here I am in the shed, Dad's shed. We're pulling apart the computer into all of its components. We've got in a computer, we've got these screws, we've got this floppy drive, we've got a hard drive.
Floppy drive, yeah.
We got this Pentium, 4,
Oh,
Pentium 3. CPU, powerful. We got the nice cream beige.
Brilliant, I love it.
Beige, computers.
Absolutely, beige. Why did they choose that? Anyway.
Beige plastic. Beautiful. And just pulling it apart into all its components. And then, that was level one, like what is this made of?
Yeah.
And then level two is, okay, where do the ingredients come from? And so that's the direction. Okay, how did they get from there to here? Oh, there's the logistics.
Yeah.
Okay, how were the ingredients made and produced? And then you repeat the same exercise again. And if you continue to do that, you ultimately come into a realization that we all live on planet Earth. It didn't come from anywhere outside of planet Earth.
Mind blown.
Oh, that's right.
And then if you really keep pulling on that, then you go, okay, well, how did it get on planet Earth? And then you go, oh, yeah, well, planet Earth allegedly was formed from all these materials colliding together and the force of gravity pulling it all together. And then, oh, okay, and so how do we currently get our energy? Well, we get all of our energy from the sun. So the sun has been fueling the Earth for all this time, and it's led to this massive complexity of, materials and biology. And so your two streams here are biological and technical materials or non-living materials.
Yeah.
Yep.
And each of those categories essentially fit together in this nice complete system.
Yeah.
And so it's just, that was it didn't take long before I realised there wasn't enough room on the whiteboard to complete this exercise.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
But nevertheless, it was a great exercise to do, and anyone can do it. Just take any simple thing, like we could take this little dinger here,
Deconstruct it.
pull it apart,
Yep.
understand it. What have we got? Well, we've got some metal. We've got a few different types of metal. And then you start asking questions like, what's this metal? Like, what type of metal is that? And you realise there's different ways of figuring out those metals, and then each metal has its own story. Plastic's the same. Plastic's just ridiculous. There's a great stat I came across early on. Read this fantastic book. I recommend anyone to read this, Cradle to Cradle,
Okay.
by William McDonough and another guy. I can't remember his name. But really fascinating. And they said, because they've taken it to the nth degree. They're proper professionals. I'm just an amateur garage smith. But
all the best come from the garage, I tell you.
They say, like, in a television, there's 3,000 to 4,000 actual different materials and chemicals. So if you really want to break it down, like, it's insanely complex. And so nature is circular by its nature. It's cyclical is better than circular, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas linear is how our economy is currently functioning, is linear.
Yeah.
So you imagine if the planet was just two-dimensional. Like, some people argue strongly for that one. It comes down to which school of thought are you in, and there's a strong argument today that would suggest that the Earth's round or spherical.
Yeah.
And there's a strong argument to make that we should be regarding that the economic system should be cyclical.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be linear. That's just a road to hell and destruction.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
that.
It's a direct highway. It's the slipstream to hell.
Yeah, it's nothing coming back.
No.
You're gone. Yeah, exactly.
but then who supports
Consumerism.
one and who supports the other? I mean, you got to question big business, haven't you? And big business make a lot of money through it being linear, don't they?
Yeah, and that's where there's some fundamental, and that's where you got to question the government's role as well. And what I've been through multiple cycles of finger pointing and then being pointed at and having arguments with people, and then you realise that it's actually, again, back to the same thing. It's one planet, one people, and we all need to work together. And in a natural system, if we look at an ecosystem, the more complex the ecosystem, the more stable it is. And so if we are striving for just simple monolithic businesses that, in a linear system of just monopoly businesses, with linear supply chains, then that results in a very fractured, fragmented, unsustainable, unstable economy.
Yeah.
Whereas a circular economy is beautifully sustainable because whatever happens, in one particular area, there's so many other options around that can easily move in and evolve and cover. So if you remove a species from an ecosystem, it sets in motion a whole chain reaction of adjustment, but ultimately it'll restabilize in a new balance. And that's that cyclical dynamic, and that's where we need to encourage that and recognise that we need to take a very holistic approach to our decision making, and avoid that linear thinking and avoid this kind of, it's the whole, people say it a lot today, but it's like, the two-party system. It's like, that's just too binary. We need to get it more complicated in order for it to become more sustainable, more flexible and adaptable. The complexity is inherently, it's a necessary component. It's like, imagine if you're trying to make a beautiful image on a computer and you've only got a few pixels to work with. If you want a beautifully high definition picture, you need that complexity there to really bring it to life. And the economy is no different. And if we're thinking about economy in silos, we're just not thinking correctly, because nothing really is sustainable in a silo. It needs an input, it needs an output, and they need to be able to be regenerated, or that will ultimately just.
But you must have been talking like this for years and years and years. I mean, are we on the brink? In your opinion, are we too late? or can we do something now that can be sustainable? Because we all do our little bit. We all think doing a little bit as far as recycling at home, composting, is going to have an effect. But then you sort of think of the wider picture, thinking, is it really? Is it really? Or is it the government? Should the government be stepping in saying, right? I mean, they've got this, what they call EPR. The EPR, the Extended Producer Responsibility Act in, I think, one country in the world. I can't remember which country it is, but I was reading about that thinking...
Yeah, there's a few of them. There's a few different approaches. But yeah, that's a good example of where the government's playing a role in the ecosystem and they're playing a productive role.
So this is where...
how they do that, though, is very important.
Yeah, well...
Because they can get it wrong and they can meddle and they can overdo it or underdo it, and that has knock-on implications. But that's always just a double-edged sword of regulation, is that it's really hard to get it right.
So Wayne, do you know what the EPR is?
No.
So the EPR is it's like a legislation so that the producer has to pay for the recycling of any
right, okay.
anything they
That
produce.
makes sense,
That's correct, is it?
Yeah, extended producer responsibility is kind of the concept, and then there's a bunch of variations on that playing out throughout the world. They're called different things.
Okay.
In Australia, it's the Product Stewardship Act. So that's...
Is it alive and well?
I wouldn't say it's alive and well, no.
Okay.
Well,
It's alive.
like many policies.
Oh, it's alive. At least it's alive.
It requires constant life support.
Can I just for the benefit of some of our viewers that still haven't gotten their head around this whole idea of the circular economy and the straight line, the linear version, if we use a TV as an example, and you were saying that as many as 3,000 to 4,000 products or parts or chemicals that have been made, we're talking about when the life cycle of that product is over. Typically what we used to do is dig a hole in the ground and put it in there and walk away. And what we're saying now is that there's a whole economy of businesses that will then deconstruct this product and repurpose and reuse every individual part in that product. And so then that is where that product, instead of disappearing at the end of a line, going nowhere, doing nothing and probably harming the environment, is now part of an economy that is rebuilding and repurposing. And so it's continually in motion. And that's what I think people need to get their heads around. And from that, you've got a whole commercial scenario where people are making money, creating new product, repurposing things that would traditionally just been thrown out and using them for the benefit of all of us. Because that's the whole idea, isn't it? We're all on this one planet. It's not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We have to start looking after each other as well as our planet. But my only concern is, and what I've found the hardest part to get my head around, is the buy-in from big business, and just exactly how far they're willing to go before they think, well, for them, it's got to be about money. We still need to make money. So we'll have buy-in as long as we can get a turn of profit out of it.
Yeah, it has to. So this is part of sustainability. What is sustainability? It's unsustainable if it's unprofitable.
Yep.
So,
and if you don't have the buy-in from those companies, it is not going anywhere, is it?
Yeah. So whatever solutions we're talking about, it has to be profitable. Mm-hmm. But profit is a very broad idea.
It is, yeah.
How do we define profit? If we're going to use traditional economics, we're going to exclude the value of natural capital. So under a linear system, we don't value our natural capital, meaning that we don't recognise the value of a tree, we don't recognise the value of an organism, what function that does. Like a plant produces oxygen, but don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Who needs that? We can make oxygen, guys. It's fine.
It's scary.
We can make oxygen profitable.
Yeah.
It's like water.
It's like water. We've done that.
If you're talking about rage, like water, bottled water, fuck, that gets me.
Yeah.
Jeez.
That makes me irate, actually.
Yeah.
Comes from the sky, should be clean. If it's not clean, there's a problem.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to profitability.
But,
I love that.
Yeah. We'll move on from that, Michael. You can come back to that in your own time.
Yeah.
But profitability is obviously eaten by the fact that, the subject is made so much more complex by the fact that we're mixing all these things together. Like I was reading about the plastics and how there's different types of plastics, and only certain grades of plastic are actually going to be recycled. Otherwise, below, I think, grade 2, anything below grade 2, so 3 and onwards, people don't even bother. Companies don't even bother because it's just too complex and too low grade plastic that they can't make it into anything. So it goes into landfill.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complex than that.
But it is.
The grades are kind of an arbitrary thing. Like at the end of the day, you've got just chemistry, and it's like polymer chemistry. A lot of plastic, it's made from oil, it's made from carbon, it's made from the captured energy of the sun or the dead dinosaurs, or however you want to describe it. That's what plastics come from. The recyclability of plastic is limited by its purity because the chemistry is quite precise. So you can't recycle plastic from a mix of different chemicals. It's like
doesn't work.
It's like trying. I can't think of a good example, but it's like it needs to be a clean, homogeneous mixture for the recipe to work.
Yeah.
Like it's like making a cake and you're just going to fill it with all sorts of different rubbish. Like it's not going to be a cake. Like it needs to be.
Well, it'll be some sort of cake, but
clean mixture.
Very nice.
You need to stick to the recipe to some degree. Right. There's some flex in it, but the biggest issue we've got here, and we're constantly wrestling with plastic because a lot of the plastic today is landfilled because of the change in legislation, which is a step of positive progress. However, it's just been made maybe without enough foresight, and it's created another problem. But it's a problem it's a problem in the right direction. So one of the biggest costs of that has been the relative, the damage that it does to the idea of recycling, because it demoralises people who are trying to do the right thing, and then they find out, like with the red cycle fiasco.
The red cycle, I was going to mention that. Jeez.
That it's just like you're just destroying people's faith in the system. Like the system is letting us down.
Yeah.
So we've got to devise better ways. So back to the earlier point about, is it the government's job? And I don't believe it's the government's job. I think we need to give the government a bit of a rest here. And I think we can all take responsibility, but we've got to extend our responsibility in the community. Big business has fractured communities, and they're providing us tools to connect. But in reality, our community dynamic is being fractured, where today you don't know all your neighbours.
Yeah, absolutely.
You wouldn't just send your kids around to your neighbour's house you don't really know that well.
Well, if you do know them well, you don't want to send them there anyway.
I mean, I don't know what it was like in the 50s.
No, you really well. They just don't want your bloody
my
kids.
neighbours.
I mean, I'll send my kids to anyone that'll have them. But yeah, it's
true. Though it's true.
So I put a lot more responsibility back on the user to make better decisions, because today they have access to information. They can't say, I don't let anyone today plead ignorance and say that
But so many people do. You go to the local supermarket, right? They've got banned plastic bags, but then you got the fruit ones, and you see people going, getting 10 so they could just carry one orange in there. It's like, dude, I mean, that's when I feel rage.
Yeah, that's the new cigarette butt, right?
Oh, it's new cigarette butt, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, my God. I mean, people just bury their heads in the sand there. If it's just too difficult, they won't do it. And I find that inexcusable.
Yeah. Is that because the buyer is saying, well, it's free, and if I want the material recycled fruit bag that's got the little which what I use, but I've got to pay money for that. Okay, come on, it's only $2.
Yeah,
it's $2. So you might need to spend $6 to get enough to cover all your fruit and veggies, but at least you're not using the plastic.
Yeah.
When I was using plastic up until 5 years ago too, and I was going, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Well, and I looked at this thing and going, oh, it's recycled. It's better for the environment. What am I using this crap for?
Yeah.
So I made the change, but that was only 5 years ago, man. So there's a whole thing of it's a habit. It's a habit, and you just got to start thinking about it differently.
And it's the habit is driven by the convenience of it. So
convenience.
Convenience,
absolutely.
People today are very busy, and attention is, a precious resource today, and it's being harvested and capitalized on by big business. But it's our ability to maintain our focus and attention is what allows us to make good decisions. And so when we're really busy and we're mentally occupied and our attention's elsewhere when we're food shopping, I mean, so I don't go to the shops very often. It's good policy if you want less stuff.
Yeah.
But
it's a bit like the Christmas shopping policy.
But when I go like very, detailed looking at things. 'Cause for me, it's like a real insight into the current state of play.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the problems we've got is too much choice. And the choices we do have are heavily manipulated. But if you go and have a look at the choices we have, you've got to get through the bullshit that's layer one bullshit. Then layer two bullshit is like the ingredients list.
Yeah.
Because that's also bullshit.
Yeah.
And then where do the ingredients come from?
And then
you can't trust it.
Australia made doesn't actually mean Australia made, because there's all still components of stuff that's coming from everywhere.
And we're talking about waste here, but there's more insidious forms of waste, and it comes back to what is waste, right? So, if we're going to put poison in our body, because certain chemicals are not good for us to be eating, but they're very profitable for manipulating and influencing the taste buds.
Yep.
Like, it's cheap to make synthetic flavors.
Yeah.
But are they good for us?
And they look nice as well.
Yeah. And
Making vegetables look nice. They don't taste anything, but they look nice.
So I think we've got to, buy. It's back to, you've got to buy quality.
Yeah.
Think about what you're doing and really try to claw your mental attention back to just try to make better decisions as an individual. And then we got to come together as a community to organise as a community more effectively. Like your market gardens and your farmers markets are really pumping places these days. They're really good. And, COVID smashed them to some degree, but you can sense there's a palpable sense of desire in the community to come together as a community.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I think that's where we need to focus, is galvanising community. And my experience in working with politicians is that they're very capable people.
Yeah.
And they're looking to make the best decision, but they're limited by the options they got.
Yeah.
And so we've been told many times, like, guys, we love it, but tell us the answer. What's the solution? How do we do it?
Yeah.
And initially, when I was a bit younger, I was like, well, that's not my job, is it? Surely you should figure it out, guys. And it's like, no, that's... and they told us we are here. This is our function. You want to do it?
You got to tell us how.
You got to do it, and we will do it if it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then back to profitability. It has to be profitable. It's not just good ideas and intentions. They're not going to save the world. It's got to be profitable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Otherwise, no one has buy-in. It needs to be profitable.
Man, I must admit, I'm a bit of a glass half empty when it comes to that. I just notice the bad things that people do. And I'm glad you say there's optimism in the communities.
There's a lot of good stuff.
I wish I could see what you see.
I think we've turned a corner. I think there's more, as you said, with regards to community. I see more community-oriented thinking within people than there was 10 years ago. And I see and talk to more people that look at a label more carefully than they've ever done because of health and understanding. But also, I think people are becoming more discernible with how they're using product as well. Do I think we're a long way to go? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there has been a shift. But the momentum needs to build,
There's a shift, and there's a lot of good momentum, and it's building. But it's just the reality is, and it's kind of where you're at as well, is it's like we're not out of the woods here, guys. The door is still closing, and we may be cooked. So we've really got to organise, and we've really got to push forward.
That's a good way to put it.
Well, next time I go to the supermarket, I'm going to take a good look around to see how many people are actually looking at labels and how many people are not picking up those free plastic bags. The EPI index, and we're running out of time for this section, but so we'll just go through this. Top three countries who are EPI index is the environmental performance index or something. It's an index to judge how well countries are actually doing environmentally. It's about 40 indicators.
I would hazard a guess that maybe Northern Europe somewhere would be
Go
come
on.
into it.
Countries.
Finland. something like
Finland. Yeah, Finland.
I love Finland.
Finland in the last
we talked about that
episode.
regarding
education. They've got
yeah.
the best education
Yeah,
system.
absolutely.
The third.
Oh,
Third.
okay. Well, there you go.
That's brilliant. You got Denmark.
Norway.
No.
No?
The UK.
Really?
Yeah. You would not believe it, would you?
For
Wow.
what's the index?
The EPI index, the environmental. They've got 40 indicators that indicate how environmentally friendly they are. Yeah, I can see that look. I recognise that look.
Face is like a yeah, right.
I'd like to check the data sources.
Watch out! You're starting to rage.
Let's go. Let's go. The worst three.
Oh God!
The bottom three countries in the world.
Be America.
No.
Australia.
It would be
Nope.
probably a country that's not that is seen as poor.
Yeah,
So because
Precisely.
they don't have the backing or the support.
that's right.
How are they? It's just how do they measure that though? Because
Yeah.
the impact that the wealthiest nations have, like you're saying, America is 30% of the consumption.
That's right. That's right.
So
And they're not
how
in the
do
top
they
three. So the worst are Vietnam, Myanmar, formerly Burma,
Burma. Oh,
and
boy.
India.
I'm going to tell my wife that.
Australia are 55th. Which isn't great. It's
I
lower
think
than the
this-
US.
Let's
This
hang on.
index
We've got
seems a bit
Michael on our
bad,
side, and he's
yeah.
changing everything. So let's give it a bit of time.
So yeah, just some interesting stats on how countries are performing. But like you say, you got to look at those numbers and you think, maybe not. But
Okay.
to be continued, guys. On
awesome.
to the next part of the show.
Good stuff, Michael. Thank
Nice
you.
one.